I want to tell you a little bit about these fantastic moms that you're going to be hearing from next. So this session is called Endless Homeschooling Possibilities, right? And so the speakers that we have with us today, one person that I'm sure you've seen the name Melanin Village. For all of let me get myself together. For all of us who are enrolled in Facebook groups, I am sure at some point the name Melanin Village has come across your screen, right? So Melanin Village was founded by Brenaea Fairchild, one of today's panelists. As a lifelong learner and teacher, Brenaea worked in public schools and coached pre-service teachers prior to launching the Melanin Village. She knew she wanted to homeschool after her culminating undergraduate research at Princeton University, highlighting the inaccurate portrayal of slavery in the Civil War in US history textbooks. This research, coupled with her experience in education and her admiration of her mentors who homeschooled, fueled much of her desire to teach her children at home. The mother of two boys, one of her greatest joys in the homeschool is teaching world languages. And as a trilingual, Brenaea immerses her children in both Spanish and French. With Brenaea today is Bernetta Reese. Bernetta Reese. Bernetta Reese is a homeschooling parent and the president and CEO of B.Reese Enterprises. With over 20 years of public service, she's worked with nearly every U.S. cabinet level department and has been a guest speaker across the nation's capital. She has also worked with homeschool families, public schools, universities, youth programs, and more. She served as Vice President of Undergraduate Affairs for the University System of Maryland Student Council and as Executive Chair of the University of Maryland Global Campus Student Advisory Council. She now serves on the Alumni Advisory Board. First of all, let's give the snaps. And I see Nichelle, and our third panelist is Nichelle Nelson. I was gonna pop you in there, Nichelle. I didn't see you before. I'm so sorry. So let me tell you about Nichelle Nelson. Nichelle Nelson is the owner of Warp and Weft History. She's a veteran homeschool mom with 25 plus years of experience. She holds an associate's and a bachelor's degree in history and an MS.Ed, a master's in education in multicultural studies with an emphasis on social justice. As I said, she is the founder and the CEO of Warp and Weft History, which is a virtual history education program. Nichelle was also a speaker in the second annual BFHES Virtual Teach-In. And I don't know which session it was yesterday that I was speaking in, but I was talking about, it was a session that we had last year where the speaker didn't show up. And then Cheryl and I were like, okay, we're going to do this panel. Because it was so many people, it was like over 50 people in this group. And Nichelle, I don't even know if you were supposed to be a speaker last year or if you just emerged as a speaker last year.
It was an emergence.
An emerging speaker, right?
I think I did do a coffee talk.
Right. She's an emerging speaker. So that's how we roll, right? Because we realize that so many of the participants during our teaching also have experience to share. So I'm really excited about this session. Today, these three women, I'm going to disappear after I just set up the framework of what today's talk is going to be about. So these women are going to talk about, as you can see, their very diverse experience. They're going to talk about what led them to homeschool, give us a look at what homeschooling looked like in the early stages to what homeschooling looks like now for them. And as you all know, it sometimes is very different, right? Because it's a lot about that mindset change that we have as parents. And once they each have an opportunity to share that story, they're going to then open up the floor for questions. So you can begin putting your questions when all of them are sharing their stories and you have particular questions, please use the chat to put your questions in there, because then they're going to move to answering your questions that are in the chat. All right. And without further ado, I'll disappear and you all can take it away.
Thanks so much for having us. I'm really excited to be chatting here with y'all. I think Khadijah's first question was just kind of like about our homeschool journey. So I think whoever wants to kind of kick off about what got you started and how it's changed, I think we could jump in.
Do you want to start, Brenaea?
Sure, okay. I don't have to. So my name is Brenaea. I'm a homeschool mom of 2 boys, but I always like to say that my homeschool journey started before I started homeschooling my own children. So for a while, my husband and I had legal custody over one of my younger siblings. And so that was my first foray into homeschooling almost a decade ago now. And when I tell y'all, it was a hot mess. I mean, it was just a hot mess. I didn't know what I was doing. There was a lot of temptation to want to replicate school at home. And I also just was not plugged in. So kudos to all of you for just being here, like being poured into, hearing from other people, because the truth was, I just thought about the things that you think when you think of school, right? What's the curricula? Is she logging in enough hours? Those type of things. But I was not at all thinking about the well-rounded experience that really is homeschooling. So when people used to say things like homeschool is a lifestyle, I didn't get it. My background was in education. I'm like, so I get teaching as a lifestyle, but I didn't understand, like, okay, I have this, she was a high school at that time, going into high school, what exactly is homeschool supposed to look like? So we really, really struggled. We didn't have any community. We didn't have, it was just hard for me to find structure throughout the day, hard to figure out how to balance working and just all the things, managing the home. I had a newborn as well at the time. So it was hard and it did not last long, okay? Now, fast forward to where we are now, my oldest son is almost 7, and I also have a toddler, and it is a world of a difference. And so if I was just going to, in short, say the big things that have made a difference for us in our homeschool journey has been a huge mindset shift for me. So people often talk about when you get into homeschooling to take time to de-school. And actually, I like to use the word to reschool. So to kind of reorient yourself to the way that you think about learning and education, and that it's everywhere. And honestly, as I grew with my child, from newborn and having struggling with a high schooler through homeschool to then having, a fresh new baby and just being able to see the world through his eyes, I was like, yeah, learning is everywhere. School is everywhere, and being able to pick up on those moments and to really enjoy them. And so that sort of reorienting, that reschooling, me viewing school in a different way and education in a different way, really, really transformed our homeschool experience. So I'd say that's one thing. And then the other thing has been community. I actually see a few of the Village Sisters here. So I have this homeschool community. It's really awesome. It's called the Melanin Village. And so it's a space in which Black homeschooling moms are doing this together. We have these types of meetups every twice a month, but then also we're encouraging each other, right? These are the tips. These are the tricks. And lots of folks are former educators or veteran homeschoolers. So to just be able to say, this is what's worked for me. And I think just us all even being here right now, it's just being able to hear other people's story, because there's just power in the collective wisdom, right? It's like a piece of your story, a piece of your story, a piece of the story here. Those things are things that I can chew on, can think about, and then I could see how they apply to my own situation. So I'd say just the shift in the way that I viewed education, and that I viewed the way that homeschooling had to look, and then also being tapped into community that was focused on the same goals and that was really supportive. So that would be my quick, short answer to that one.
Okay. I echo some of what you said, or a lot of what you said, because, times have changed so much. Years ago when I started homeschooling, there was still this sort of stereotype, this vision of, what are you doing and why are you doing this, to your children and to yourself, et cetera. And so that was a big part of my struggle when I first started, because we're actually in a really great school. But we had some family shifts, some family changes that led me to this decision. And when we first started, I was like you, Brenaea, and my daughter, by the way, her name is also Brenaea. So I'm just thinking of you and her at the same time. but yeah, so when we first started, I think my kids were in the 2nd and 5th grade. I have 2 teenagers now. My daughter is now 17. My son is soon to be 15. And we've been doing this for almost 7 years. But when I first started, I was terrified. I was worried that I was going to do something wrong, that I was going to get in trouble. I was online looking for all types of curriculum from the county. And I was literally trying to model my homeschool program after the school system. I mean, we had lunch, recess. The day was like from 8, in the morning. So just like a school day. And it took me nearly half a year at least to snap out of it. And it wasn't until I expanded my reach and my network to other homeschool families to learn what they were doing, as well as working within my county. In my county, I'm in Prince George's County. They have a very robust homeschool office here that's very involved, very supportive, and helped to give me some guidance. And eventually I learned it doesn't have to be like a school system. That's the exact opposite of what we're trying to do here, right? So whether it's unschool, reschool, deschool, whatever you want to call that, it's up to you. You get to design your entire program from start to finish. I guess the other struggle for me was once I learned that, it was overwhelming the amount of information, resources, and programs that are actually out here. I mean, you could spend weeks researching homeschool programs, or should I say just programs that you can bring into your homeschool journey. And you can do that all day, every day, and still not see them all. I mean, it's just endless. And with COVID now, everything's online. So it even opened up more doors, more families are doing it. So, I learned to love it in terms of the research and the planning part of it. I launched a blog, homeschoolbkids.com. And it just really captured the journey of my kids for a number of years. So feel free to visit that website. And, we just learned to love it. And like you said, it became our lifestyle.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
So I am ancient compared to y'all. I actually started homeschooling in, according to the postmark on the box, that contained our first set of curriculum, because my daughter won't let me get rid of it because she's a museum curator and everything is an artifact. So the postmark on the box says September 10th, 1993.
Nice. You look good, Nichelle.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So we were living in Germany at the time. My husband is an extrovert and I'm an introvert. And we had just gotten to Germany. Our firstborn daughter was born in the Azores. We spent 12 years living overseas. My husband's retired Air Force. So I'm standing in the hallway of the base chapel and he's in the fellowship hall talking to everybody because that's how introvert extrovert marriages work. And he comes running to me and he says, "You have got to meet this lady. She teaches her own children at home." And my first words were, "And your point is," because I had grown up in school being told Nichelle takes too long to do her schoolwork. Nichelle is too slow. She's intelligent, but she doesn't finish things. And so it left me with a very low self-esteem about my own educational journey. And so I agreed to start, phonics. Okay, I'll teach her to read. And then so by the time I made that decision, we had daughter number 2. And daughter number 2 is the type of person that if her older sister got to do something, she was going to do it too. And so while I'm sitting there teaching phonics to my then, I think she might have been 4, then here's my 2-year-old coming, pushing her own chair. I'm going to learn to read too. And she learned to read at 3.5. And I was just amazed. And so with every success, I got a little bit more confidence, and I began to see that I began to meet more homeschool families. Eventually, we moved to Okinawa that had a very, very large homeschool support group. And I just learned so much from people who had already been on the journey before me. And after a while, it did absolutely become our lifestyle. We added a son to our family when we were in Okinawa, and then we retired to Texas. And about 2-3 months after we retired, we had baby number 4, our third daughter. In 2003, our firstborn daughter, our oldest daughter, told us that she had a headache on December 23rd, actually, 2002. Within 3 weeks, she had passed away from a brain tumor that we were aware of for only 72 hours. And so at that point, we questioned, were we supposed to continue homeschooling? Was it just for Adrian, or is this the plan for the rest of them? And we actually had just a few minutes to ourselves. It seemed like a few minutes between Adrian's passing and the funeral, where my husband, myself, and our then 11-year-old daughter made the decision that we were going to continue the journey, because the grieving process during that time, we would have been completely separated. She would have been in middle school. I would have had to get a job. My son would have been in preschool. Our daughter in nursery school. We would have been completely separated. And that would not have been conducive to our healing as a family. So we continued on the journey. To this day, all 3 of our children have graduated from Baylor University. That was their choice. They wanted to go to Baylor. They wanted to go to the same school so that one day they could have, like, homecoming together, wear the same colors, all that kind of stuff. So they are now 30, 24, and 22. The 30-year-old is the director of engagement for a National History Day competition. Our son was just promoted to first lieutenant in the United States Air Force and is stationed overseas. And the baby is a legislative aide to a U.S. congressman and is supervising 17 interns. So that's what the baby's doing right now. We launched Warp and Weft History during the pandemic, with my older daughter also having the degree in history, my younger daughter having, at that time, she was, I think, a sophomore in college, majoring in political science. We decided that we wanted to allow others to experience the joy that we had in interest-led learning, and but within the realm of history and political science. So that's what got us started.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Thanks so much I love to hear y'all's stories, and thanks for sharing something so personal, Nichelle. And actually, I have a question for y'all, because I feel like one thing that I heard emerge is this idea of educating the whole child, right? Like suddenly unboxing school and then saying, like you were saying, Bernetta, like it's endless possibilities. And so I'm just curious what that has looked like throughout your journey, to not just teach the math and the science, but to teach to their hearts and to teach to their interests, to kind of pulling out that well-roundedness. I always like to kind of hear what people's journeys and experiences are in that.
Yeah, I was able to really tap into my kids' individual interest. And I've always tried to find curriculum that supports that. So for instance, my daughter, she's changed her mind now. Now she wants to major in plant biology. But for a long time, she wanted to be a veterinarian. Since she was at least 9, 10, 11 years old, that was what she wanted to do. And so we would actually take trips all the time. We went out to Cornell. We were kind of aiming for Cornell at one point in time, doing summer programs there, looking at their veterinarian programs. They have wonderful programs there. And just getting her that type of exposure as early on as possible, until she shifted. Now she shifted. We're looking for more, plant-based type exposures, and she does volunteer work and internships in a number of different places. But that's the beautiful thing about homeschool, is once you learn what your kids enjoy, and you have much more time to do that, because they're not away from you every day, all day. They're
Mhm.
home with you. So you can actually talk to them, engage them, pick their brains, and better guide them through this part of their lives. And when you discover what they enjoy, what they're interested in, you can really tailor your program to that specifically. You have complete control. Unlike the school systems, who obviously have to follow a very set, rigid curriculum. So we did that. My son was into tech, got him into a lot of tech-based type activities. They did at least 2 or 3 different sports. And, they call it homeschool, but we were rarely ever home. If you go to the blog, homeschoolbkids.com, you'll see their curriculum was not at home at all. It was outside. Everywhere we could find a program, especially the free ones, we were there. And it made it very easy to do that. Work was sometimes a challenge because like I said, like you heard, I work full time across the federal government. So it was great when my kids reached that age where they could stay home without me. And I used a lot of digital tools and technology to help facilitate that. Google Classroom, we had that. Of course, text messages and phones and things like that. But it made it easy for me to still monitor their progress and what they were doing from day to day. So, Nichelle, how about you?
So I worked at home. I was a medical transcriptionist for 14 years. And so I was able to wrap my schedule around, as you said, Bernetta, all of their activities. We were always in the car. I like to say that I reinvented myself for each child. So for Adrian, I was dance mom. Adrian danced in, she was a worship dancer, and she danced on a community dance team. And so everything we did was dance, dance, dance. Then when Brandis decided, Brandis was a competitive learner. So she competed in the spelling bee. And then once she aged out of that, she got into, when she aged out of that, that's when she got into the National History Day competition. And so everything was about that. Our son, he started out more science, and I followed their interests. If he was he did do Science Bowl and Science Olympiad, but he had an unfortunate situation with a group of homeschoolers that don't look like us, and it soured him on that. So he ended up. He created, our children always, whenever they wanted to do something, they're good at like presenting a business plan. So like with our youngest, when she might set up a tripod with a wipe-off board, and this is something that I want, and she's already got it all figured out. Well, for our son, he took all of our vacation videos from a Disney World trip and set them to music and taught himself how to line them up with the firework explosions. I mean, it was so professionally done. And we sat there watching it, stunned, just absolutely stunned. Well, that was his way of saying, I'd like to major in film in college. And that's exactly what he did. With Karis, she was a Girl Scout, and she loved selling cookies. That was like her thing, getting out, talking to people, and she is a very people person. So, as I said earlier, I'm an introvert, so she's dragging me along, and I'm just holding the boxes of cookies while she is making her pitches, and then when she got into she took a government class at a homeschool co-op, and that just sparked her interest. And what I think is just fascinating is that my husband and I, like, with the exception of my daughter, who also has a degree in history, they are totally different from us. They didn't have to do what we did. They didn't have to replicate who we were. We were not making them into mini-me's. And so it has just been fascinating watching this group of people that is literally half him and half me, and the different endless possibilities of their interest levels and what they have become has been wow, just wow.
Yeah. You know, I really like what you just said, Nichelle. Like, I felt like I had to reinvent myself for each child, right? Like, I became like a new mom in some ways, a new educator in some ways. And I feel like there's a few questions in the chat. And one of them is, what has been one of kind of your greatest challenges as you homeschool, and how have you navigated these? And I was just talking to a friend. She's getting ready to start homeschooling. And she's like, will I ever find a rhythm? Will things ever feel like the same? And I said, you know, there will be seasons, because the truth is, when you finally find the thing that's working for this season, your child up and decides they're interested in something else, like Bernetta says, or there's a family move or something like that. And so the beauty of homeschooling is the great flexibility, how it can follow our children, how it can, you know, mold to our life, that it really is life learning. But for me, one of the challenges has been the fact that then I have to constantly adapt into change to that, because of what the moment requires, right? So now if you have this greater desire doing that, and I do think there's a lot of beauty in supporting our being supportive parents in that way. Like Bernetta said, like she was interested in being a vet, and now she's interested in being plants. And if she, you know, if Bernetta was like, nah, we done invested in this vet thing, you got to do this, it'd be like, okay, what's the point, right? It's like not being able to fall back. And I say in college, I changed my major 3 times. And I knew, like, as a teenager, I said, I'm going to be the senator who redefines America's public education system. Y'all, I had 3 like a little mini internship at the Department of Education. I said, nope, not for me, right? Like, you have these experiences and you're like, okay, this is not the way that I want to impact change. Do I work in education? Yes, but it's in a different way. And it's because of having those experiences. So I just was out just to that question. We can take a shot at some of the other ones, but the challenge is, one of the challenges, it comes from the beauty. The beauty is the flexibility, but the challenge is the flexibility. There are so many options. There are so many ways in which we have to bend and change from season to season. And so it's constantly requiring that growth. And one of the ways that I manage that has really been being in community, but like making sure that they're the people you call and they actually support you homeschooling. You know, because if you complain to someone who sends their kids to traditional school, who thinks you shouldn't be doing all that, they're gonna be like, why are you doing this to yourself? Like, what are you doing? You don't have to put up with this. There's a place you can drop them off. So I think just like being tapped into a place where people are like, hey, yeah, I get it. It is hard. And this can still be the hard choice you make. Like, you can do hard things and you can be supported in it. So
That's right. That's right. And it's still for my kids, I'm just kind of addressing the question about the experience. It really instilled in them a different type of appreciation for learning. Not that they don't get tired or bored, but you know, they don't have to take a holiday off. Summer is just like any other day to them, because we don't wait until certain times of the year to enjoy life. If we want to take a week off, a weekend off, if we want to go on a trip, we can do that whenever, wherever we want to. And so they're literally learning all year round. They're doing if we go on vacation, if there's a program that interests them, we might work it into our vacation as well. So that's the other benefit of that. In terms of their feedback, my daughter will never go back to public school. She's going to go to college though, but she will never go back. My son goes back and forth with it, and that's okay. You know, that's okay. COVID is really where was a struggle for everybody, right? Because we just couldn't go anywhere. And so that just kind of added a bit more isolation that typically we were accustomed to. But when you add in all those different factors, it did change the landscape a little bit. But they really enjoy just being able to navigate their day, you know, without too much fuss. They get up, they have a normal day, they eat breakfast, they hang out, they do their work. And my one rule is just, hey, as long as you're getting the work done, you know, by my checkpoints, you know, we're good to go. And that's how college is. That's how the real world is. You get a deadline, you have to meet it. No one's monitoring you all day long, hovering over your shoulder, watching what you're doing. So they have a whole new level of freedom and independence that actually better prepares them for the real world.
I like that point you hit on with the experiences and the drawbacks. It's not like there's not days where it's like, hey, I don't want to do this. My son literally said to me, like, can we have a real summer break? And I was like, people read, like real people read over summer break. Like this is like a special mama thing. This is normal. So I would say there are some things where he will be like, I'm so glad I'm not sitting in the classroom right now. You know, the 7-hour days, he like that kind of blows his mind still, that his friends are away from their parents for 8 hours. He's like, don't they miss their mom and dad? I'm like, probably, you know, that might be true. But also you get used to things, you know, so there are things that he knows and he appreciates. And then there's other things where he's like, oh, they get off 3 months in the summertime. He's still kind of working his mind around what does that look like? And even that I feel like is something that can be negotiated, right? Like homeschooling is about relationships, learning how to navigate as a family. And so if he has a real interest in being able to take a longer summer break, like not school year round, okay, then our schedule during the year would have to look differently. And that's something we could try together. Like no decision is a forever decision. So we try it this year, see if it works for us or for a few months. And then if not, we kind of switch back to what it is. So again, just that flexibility in leaning into that. And then I would say another maybe not necessarily drawback, but something to have to be intentional about is the relationships they're able to build outside of the homeschool community, like in our local communities. So I faithfully, when the kids get off the bus in the neighborhood, we are at the park, because these are the kids he would be going to school with and who are forming friend groups. And so that's how at this point, you know, we're getting the invites to birthday parties, etc., especially if you don't have a homeschool community around you. So, you know, he's like, I want to see my friends. And he has I got to finish these things today so we can get outside to see friends. And so that's something we've had to be intentional about, and we're like still growing in.
You know, I would add
Right.
one more thing. When I first started, the more confident you are, the better for your kids. Even though that may be hard, fake it till you make it. Because if they sense
100%.
that you are not confident in what you're
100%.
doing, you will get challenged every step of the way. And that's
Yes.
what I encountered the first 3 months. You're not a
Yes.
teacher. You know,
Yes.
who are you, mom? How are you going to educate us? And, you know, that was a part of the struggle as well. But once I got it down, and that whole confidence factor kicked in, that was the end of that.
Yes, yes. My grandma always says, like, they're doing their job. They're supposed to be pressing the limit. And loving parenting, like security is provided by giving that limit. That's like, no, I am confident in what I'm doing. And yeah, we will. And so I agree. They kind of get it by osmosis. Like, it's so nice we get to homeschool. You say it enough times, they catch themselves saying it and be like, oh, you know, like it is so nice to get to homeschool. So I agree. I'd love to hear your thoughts too, Nichelle. Sorry, I'm jumping in.
Yeah. So when you mentioned challenges, our challenges was always with curriculum. There were times where the money just wasn't there to buy curriculum. I learned how to use the library. I learned how to use cable in the classroom, which I don't even think they call it that anymore. If they have it, I learned how to use whatever resources I could find. And you know, there were times that I thought, this is going to be substandard. This is going to be, I'm not up to the level I should be. I used to look at websites for the most private, exclusive private schools, just to find out, well, what are their kids learning? Because whatever their kids are learning, my kids can learn too. And there were many things I had never taken a Latin class, but I'm like, you know what? Prince William and Prince Harry, they're learning Latin. Guess what? We're gonna learn Latin. We're gonna learn Latin too. And we did the best we could with what we had to work with. So the challenge for me was always making sure that I felt like their education was, that they were not substandard in any way. I was reading about Marva Collins. I was reading one day when we were in Okinawa, weirdest thing happened. To this day, I don't know why this guy came, but the headmaster of Piney Woods, which is the oldest Black boarding school in America, it's still in existence. He came to Okinawa. I don't even know why he was there, but I went to see him. And he talked so much about, as Bernetta was saying, about accountability and that taking care of the house is part of the education process too. So, you know, when you were talking about balance, we pretty much had the same schedule. It modified a little bit, but the same schedule pretty much all the way up. We found what worked for us. We'd start out in the morning with praise and worship. I would get out tambourines and we, stir us up. Then everybody got to pick their favorite song. We would do an hour of math because we hated math. And so we ate the biggest frog first, got that out of the way. We did an hour of language arts. And then, and I think maybe we did like an hour of health or science. Then it was lunchtime. And that was like our favorite time because either I was reading to them or they were reading to me. We would take turns. So I was always reading books to them that were just above their vocabulary level so that they would have to ask, well, what does that mean? To bring them up. They would read to me. We read while we were eating lunch. We read while we were folding laundry. We read while we were putting the dishes in the dishwasher. We spent probably about 2 hours in the afternoon before it was time to go to Girl Scouts and karate and Boy Scouts and all of our other stuff. And that gave us even like a common language. I can say to one of my children, you're kicking the chairs in the dark. That's a phrase from one book that we read many, many, many years ago. But in their mind, it speaks volumes. My son has had difficulty with adults who were not raised like he was. He was raised by a military father. He was raised, you get things done, you check things off. And he's dealing with people who are not military. So I'm telling him, you might have to homeschool them. You might have to, I can use phrases from these books. If I say kicking the chairs in the dark, it means to him, you are belittling people who cannot catch on to things as quickly as you can. So you need to humble yourself. You need to slow it down. One phrase from a book we read years ago. And to me, that is the beauty of homeschooling. We have this common shared culture that even as adults, it's still a part of us. Our children, they enjoy their careers, but they're like, when we get ready to have kids, like, you're going to homeschool them, right, Mom? They still want that connection to what they experience. So.
Oh, that's awesome, Nichelle. And I want to get to some more of these questions, but I just want to give 2 real practical insights about curriculum and deciding what to teach. One, I just want to say, make a decision with what you have, because it literally is dizzying, all of the options. And like we've said, since COVID, all the things. So just try it. If it doesn't work, pivot. And if you can't try as, the most affordable option that you can, and then you can pivot to something else. Maybe there's someone that can give it to you, but just kind of make a choice so that you're not kind of stuck in that analysis paralysis. And then the other thing is to don't be afraid to teach against the curriculum. So what I mean by that is you might pick up a history book that's not good enough, or a science book that's outdated or something like that. And you can literally say, or reading an English book that is full of racism, right? You can literally just say, oh, they said this, but we know this other information too. They said this, but that itself is a teaching experience. And so I fully believe in high quality resources, and we should seek them out as we can. But you can also use poor resources as an opportunity to teach critical thinking. So just choose something, try it, get advice if you can, if you're in a community, ask people what they've used, etc. But then just kind of make a choice, and you'll figure out if it works for your family, if it works for your children, and if it's doing what you need it to do. And if not, then you use those critical thinking, strategies to say, okay, this isn't really working. This is old math, and that's not working, right? Or this new math, and this is not working for us, right? So you kind of can explore it that way. I don't know if someone wants to jump at another question. It says resources to prepare for college, even at early ages.
Well, that's a great question. And my kids are in high school now. So, we're doing just that. I've worked in lots of different resources. We use study.com, of course. Coursera is a sort of a platform that a lot of colleges and universities tap into, and they use online curriculum. We use Harvard edX platform. Alex is our math tool of choice. And I actually used some of that while I was finishing my degree as well, which is where I learned about it. My daughter would sit right next to me when I did some of my classes. And so I knew then she would be able to keep up. But I brought a lot of that, you know, if you think back to what you may have done in college or what you see other your peers and other folks doing right now, you know, you can borrow from any of that and bring that into your curriculum. You don't have to wait for them to go to college to start learning at the college level. That's the wonderful thing about homeschool. You can go whatever pace your kids are at, wherever their learning level is at, and you can push them as far as they're willing to go as you can get them to go. So that's big in my homeschool program. My daughter's been doing Coursera college courses since 8th grade, and my son as well. And some of it's easy, some of it's more challenging and complex. You know, she did her health classes through Stanford, an online class there. And several other colleges and universities. So that's one way we do that, of course. And I'm just going to throw a little tip out there. When we actually ran the numbers, I have a spreadsheet I use to track my program. You can actually finish an entire year's worth of learning in as little as 5 months. I don't know what they're doing in public schools, okay? Because if you do the math, 120 hours of learning, it doesn't take 9 months to do that. So we have different options. I have an accelerated version of the program where they can finish in 5 months and they can just kick back, or they can take the entire 9 months, you know, 1 hour a day per subject, whatever that looks like, or they can just really crank it out. So, you know, take some time and think about it, plan it out, strategize, figure out what works for your kids. We don't do every subject every day. I let them choose which days they want. Mondays might be for math, or well, math is almost every day, but it might be for English. Thursday might be for history. Science might be on Wednesdays, and they just focus on that day each week. So there's lots of ways to do it.
And I'm gonna let you jump in, Nichelle, but I do want to say, for those who are like afraid of the idea of doing something like a block schedule or a certain subject a day, the research says that it's just as effective. Think about it. High schools do this, right? There are times where kids only have math like in the fall, and then they'll have it again for a whole nother year. I'm not necessarily suggesting that, but I am saying that, you know, having a block schedule where it's, you know, an hour, you know, we do it on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, it's just as effective. Students still perform just as well. And so don't be afraid, because that concentrated time really can make a difference. And the big difference is like that one-on-one, right? Them being the one student in their class doing the thing, going at their pace, they're really getting the lesson in a significant way. So that's cool.
Yeah, so math would not have worked on block with us. We actually did have to do math every day, just simply because it was something that wasn't enjoyable. To prepare for college, my older daughter, she already knew that she wanted. The reason why she chose Baylor was because they had a museum studies program. At the time that she was looking, it was undergrad. Then in that amount of time before she applied, it actually became graduate level. And so knowing what direction she wanted to go in made it easier to help her plan. With my son, he actually joined Civil Air Patrol when he was 12, and they had somebody come and talk to them about the Air Force Academy. And I'm from Colorado Springs, so he had visited the Academy a few times. The Air Force Academy is so specific that it was saying, if you are in 7th grade, and if you want to attend the Academy and you are in 7th grade, study this now. And so we used that as a guide, because I told my son, even if you change your mind and you decide, which eventually he did, he decided that he did not want to go to a military academy. He would rather go to a civilian school and do ROTC there, which is what he did at Baylor. I said, even if you change your mind, you're still getting a great education. That wherever you decide to go, that even if this is not the plan that you, so he didn't feel locked in at 12, that this is the way that I have to go. I also utilized, once they got to be about 7th grade, I utilized our homeschool co-ops. I utilized people who were subject matter experts in other fields for 2 reasons. Number one, I'm just to use math, for example, I am good in algebra, but I'm not good at teaching algebra. And my children are not good at learning algebra from me. There's going to be an argument. There might be some tears. So I learned to allow my children to be accountable to another trusted adult so that they could learn those accountability schools, so that they could learn deadlines. My 30-year-old will tell you that even though she did that, it was still a challenge once she got to college. And she says, even as an adult today, deadlines are not, I think part of that is just her personality stuff, but deadlines are not great for her. So it is a skill to learn that this is due then, this is due at this time. And so I did utilize homeschool co-op teachers from 7th grade on. Not every class, maybe 1 or 2 classes, usually definitely math and definitely science, because I said I didn't want anybody dissecting anything in my kitchen. So math and science definitely were outsourced. But I did English, I did history, I did the other language-based courses. So that helped us.
I'm so glad you mentioned outsource, because we did the same thing, especially in the beginning. To your point earlier, I think you said libraries, community centers, museums, all free for the most part. And my kids would actually go downtown to the nation's capital at the Smithsonian National Art Museum, and free art every month with actual art teachers, professionals, and free art supplies. They even have a robe, and that's on my blog as well. And that's how we got our art done.
That's awesome. It's why I'm trying to move to PG County. Everybody I talk to, I'm like, moving to PG County.
That's where you want to be.
Yes. Yes. Okay. I know our time is almost up, but I do want to just hit this last question, which is, we all work while homeschooling. And so just balancing that. And I feel like a few good tips were shared. One, just about like teaching our children how to self-manage and self-regulate. I think also learning to be super gracious with yourself. For some reason, it's easy to believe because you chose to homeschool, now you just got to suffer. Like, oh, I'm tired, I got to just do it all. Like, no, if you can outsource, do it. If you can find someone else to partner with, do it. One homeschool mom I know, she had 7 kids, and she had a day that she switched off with another family, where, you know, every Tuesday she took her, every Thursday she took. So one person had 12 kids one day, but then the other person got to do the things they needed to do with that time. I'm currently, so, you know, the Village has been an awesome place for me, because I went from knowing like 1 Black homeschooler near me to over 12, you know, just right here in New Jersey, and we're all over. And so one woman who's just 10 minutes down, you know, she's a little sister, she's 10 minutes away from me. And we're looking at trying to split childcare full time next year, so we can find a good quality person who fits into our homeschool life. And so I get some hours, she gets some hours, but now we're finding someone better. So just encouragement to get creative about your solutions, to get creative about your work time, and to be open-minded to the ways that school can look, right? So if you're schooling at the park or in the car, just knowing it can look so many different ways. And also to just be okay with, sometimes it's gonna just feel hard and it's gonna feel heavy, because it is. It's 2 jobs, right? It's 2 whole jobs, and that's okay. And it doesn't have to be every day, in every season, in every way, but you are doing really big work in both areas. And so it will feel like you're being stretched at times, and that makes a lot of sense.
Right.
I don't know if
Can I say too,
yeah.
Just to add, don't feel like you are bound to the public school system's schedule as far as September through May either, because we lived in Okinawa, and then we moved to Texas. In both places, it was too hot to do anything. And so the majority of a lot of our schooling took place June through August. Once the public school went back to school, then that's when we went to the museums and went to things like that. You don't have to be locked into this public school system calendar was created over 100 years ago for an agricultural people. We are no longer that people. And so it is not necessary for us to be bound by that schedule.
Yeah, no, that's really, really awesome. And I just love that flexibility, because yeah, it makes a difference. And I just feel like one thing, so many people, oh, cool. I just see a chat. Yes, finding local homeschoolers, y'all, community makes a difference. Just what Bernetta was saying, like finding resources, plugging into resources it makes a huge difference. And so, get plugged in. Bernetta shared a blog I dropped in here where you can learn more about the village and just trying to find homeschoolers near you. We're having a big online event in just about a month. So just find places where whatever you feel like you need to grow in, okay, how do I work? How do I prepare my kids for this? Because as you see, like, there are just so many amazing Black home educators in these different seasons. So that's real cool.